A fighter plane or fighter jet is a military aircraft primarily designed for air warfare against other aircraft. Fighters are the main means by which armed forces achieve air superiority over their opponents in battle. The first fighter planes were very small aircraft equipped with light weapons, and they became increasingly important. Fighters have evolved into the models of aircraft that we know today. In the aviation community, it has become common to classify fighter aircraft by generations for historical purposes. There are no official definitions of these generations. Rather, they represent the notion that there are stages in the development of design approaches, performance capabilities, and technological evolution of fighters. In this video, we are going to review the different generations of fighters. However, and this is very important to keep in mind, this is a highly debated concept in aeronautics because there is no consensus among experts on the variables that make a plane fall into a certain category. For military authors like Craig Pinrise or analysts like Bill Schwitman, what would be incorrect is the classification into generations itself. For them, the evolution of aviation would be a linear and progressive advance, but not in the form of generational leaps. Welcome to a new video. This is Aviation World. As we had said, there is no agreement among experts when it comes to indicating how weaponry evolves, but we are going to base ourselves on a very widespread one that separates planes into fighters in the era of propeller-driven aircraft and then 5 generations of jet aircraft. The First World War occurred between 1914 and 18. The word fighter was first used to describe an aircraft with enough lift force to carry a machine gun. The first of these fighters belonged to the Gumbo series built by the Vickers Company, which carried the FB-5 model from 1914. The main drawback of this type of aircraft was its lack of speed. They quickly realized that a plane with the intention of destroying another at least needed to be fast enough to catch up to its prey. Luckily for the designers, another aircraft type already existed that could serve as the foundation for an effective fighter. They based it on the small and fast planes developed before the war for air races, such as the Gordon Bennett Cup and the Schneider Cup. One method for mounting the first machine guns was to build the aircraft in a pusher configuration, like the Airco DH-2, with the propeller mounted behind the pilot. Another option was to mount the machine gun in a way that allows the pilot to shoot outside the arc of the propeller in the tractor configuration, like the Newport 11, or also have a second gunner crew member behind the pilot to aim and fire the machine guns mounted in a swivel setting. Around 1915, the first mechanisms for synchronizing a machine gun with the propeller appear in France and Germany, in order to be able to shoot frontally and have the bullets pass through the propeller without touching it. As collective combat experience grew, the most successful pilots developed innovative maneuvers and tactical formations to improve combat effectiveness. Until the mid-30s, the vast majority of fighter planes continued to be biplanes. But in the interwar period, monoplanes with monocoque and cantilever wing structures begin to appear, also called cantilever. The armament of these planes began to be mounted inside the wings, outside the propeller's turning area, although most designs retained synchronized machine guns. The rotary engine, popular during World War I, quickly disappeared, mainly replaced by the stationary radial engine. These multiplied their power during this period, going from the typical 180 horsepower of the Fokker D7 of 1918 to the 900 horsepower of the Curtiss P 36 of 1935. In this period, aeronautical races had returned, which introduced the first inline engines, which usually had a better weight-power ratio, and aerodynamic innovations were the basis of the aircraft of World War II. Aerial combat formed an important part of the military doctrine of this period. Two distinct schools of thought had emerged about air-to-air combat that resulted in two different design approaches. In Japan and Italy, there was still a strong belief that highly maneuverable, lightly armed single-seat fighters would continue to play a primary role in air-to-air combat. From there come designs like the Machi MC200 from Italy or the famous Mitsubishi S6 M0 from Japan. The other school of thought that emerged mainly in the United Kingdom, Germany, the Soviet Union, and the United States was the conviction that the high speeds of modern fighter planes and the G-force imposed by air combat meant that close air combat or dogfight in the classic sense of World War I would be impossible. Houses like the German Messerschmitt Bf-109, the British Supermarine Spitfire, the Soviet Yakovlev Yak-1, and the American Curtiss P-40 were all designs for high speed and good rate of climb. Having good maneuverability was convenient, but it was not the main objective. Piston engine power increased significantly during the war. For example, the pre-war introduced Curtiss P-36 Hawk had a 900 HP radial engine compared to an American P-51H Mustang, which could reach up to 2,200 horsepower. The incorporation of more powerful weaponry became a priority at the beginning of the war. Since the Spanish Civil War, 20mm cannons were incorporated into the fighters. The rapid advances in radar technology, which had been invented just before the start of World War II, made it possible to install it in some fighters. The first jet-powered fighter designs became operational in 1944 and clearly outperformed their piston engine counterparts. The new designs, such as the Messerschmitt Me-262 and the Gloucester Meteor, demonstrated the effectiveness of the new propulsion system, leading us to the first generation of jet fighters. During the course of the Korean War, it became evident that the era of piston engine fighters was coming to an end and that the future lay in jet fighters. The goal was to gain a decisive advantage in terms of maximum speed. During this period, several innovations were introduced, including ejector seats and fully movable tail horizontal stabilizers. The first close air combat between jet fighters in history occurred on November 8, 1950 during the Korean War. An F-80, as the P-80 had been renamed, intercepted two North Korean MiG-15 and shot them down, but the Americans were impressed by the speed of the swept-wing MiG-15 and responded with the design of the F-86 Sabre to be able to fight against the incredible MiGs. In the United States Navy, the Grumman F-9F Panther was adopted, which was one of the first jet fighters to use the afterburner along with the MiG-17. Radar was employed in specialized night fighters like the Douglas F-3D Skyknight. The widespread use of afterburning turbojet engines in the second generation made it possible for these early planes to break the sound barrier. Fighter designs of this time also took advantage of advances in electronic technology by adopting effective radars of a sufficiently reduced size to be carried on board small planes. And with this advancement came the first air-to-air missiles to begin to complement the cannon as the main offensive weapon. With the lessons learned in the air battles of the Korean War, technological advances in aerodynamics, propellants, and construction materials allowed designers to experiment with many aeronautical innovations. The prospect of a possible Third World War, characterized by nuclear weapon attacks, led to a degree of specialization in combat aircraft towards two very different design approaches. On one hand, interceptors like the Lightning, the F-102 or the F-106, and on the other hand, fighter bombers like the Republic Thunderchief or the Sukhoi Su-7. Close air combat or dogfighting had been downplayed in both cases. The interceptor of this era originated from the idea that missiles would completely replace the cannon and combat would take place at distances greater than visual range. As a result of this, interceptors were designed to carry a large missile load and a powerful radar, sacrificing agility in favor of good speed performance, flight ceiling, and climb rate. Emphasis was placed on the ability to intercept strategic bombers flying at high altitudes. Fighter bombers, on the other hand, could alternate between air superiority and ground attack missions, and were usually designed to make high-speed, low-altitude attacks. In the third generation, innovations continued, but with an emphasis on maneuverability and traditional ground attack capabilities. Improvements for the aerodynamic performance of third-generation fighters included control surfaces such as foreplanes or canards, leading edge flaps, movable slats, and blown flaps. During these years, a multitude of technologies were tested for vertical or short takeoffs and landings. During the 60s, growing combat experience with air-to-air missiles showed that air combat often ended in close air combat or dogfight. Thus, due to the poor results in Vietnam, importance was given back to the cannon, developing new automatic cannons that use an electric motor to move the firing and reloading mechanism. Fourth-generation fighters continued the trend towards multi-role configuration and were equipped with increasingly sophisticated weapon systems and avionics. They were based on an approach that emphasizes aircraft designs that were capable of performing rapid transitions, that is, rapid changes in speed, altitude, and direction, rather than relying solely on high speed as the main virtue. One of the first designs based on this is the F-15 Eagle and the Sukhoi Su-27, the F-16 Fighting Falcon, and the MiG-29, among others. Other innovations introduced in fourth-generation fighters include Doppler pulse fire controlled radar with look-down, shoot-down capability, the head-up display data presentation head-up display, hands-on throttle and stick controls, that is, controls on the throttle and control stick, and multifunction displays. Multifunction displays, all of which have become essential equipment. Composite materials in the form of honeycomb-shaped aluminum structural elements and laminated coatings of carbon fiber, reinforced polymer began to be incorporated. Even with the incredible advances in air-to-air missiles of this era, internal cannons continued to be standard weaponry. Unlike interceptors of earlier times, most fourth-generation air superiority fighters were designed to be agile in close air combat or dogfighting, although there were exceptions such as the Mikoyan MiG-31 interceptors and the Panavia Tornado air defense bomber. The end of the Cold War led many governments to significantly reduce military spending, and in this period appear the designs called Generation 4.5, 4+, or 4+, and they are so called because the manufacturers developed on designs of fourth-generation aircraft, reducing development costs. The main characteristics of this subgeneration are the application of advanced aerospace materials and modern digital avionics, partial reduction of the signature, mainly radio frequency, and high integration of systems and weapons. These fighters have been designed to operate in a communication network-centered battle environment and are mainly multi-purpose aircraft. Generation 4.5 houses also adopted vector thrust to further improve maneuverability capabilities, and high-power engines allowed some designs to achieve a degree of supercruise capability, that is, to fly faster than the speed of sound without afterburning. Extensive use of carbon fiber composites begins, such as the Eurofighter Typhoon, the Dassault Rafale, and the Saab 39 Gripen NG. The fifth generation began with the introduction of the American Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor fighter at the end of 2005. Currently at the forefront of military aircraft design, fifth-generation fighters are characterized by being designed from the outset to operate in a network-centric battle environment, and because they offer extremely low multispectral signatures in all aspects, using advanced shape and materials techniques. In general, the integration of all these elements aims to provide fifth-generation fighters with the first to see, first to shoot, and first to knock down capability. The cost of developing such sophisticated aircraft is as high as their capabilities. That's why the F-35, for example, enrolls 8 countries as risk partners and to share the costs. There is also a lot of talk on social media about 6th generation aircraft, which would be unmanned combat aerial vehicles. But I haven't found an author or a book that talks about these as 6th generation, and that's why I'm not going to expand on the topic until there are unmanned fighter planes, if we ever see this. I hope you liked it. If so, leave a like and a comment. These videos take many days, many hours of work, so if you want to financially support this effort, you have the means PayPal and Patreon to do so. Until a new delivery, this is World of Aviation. Thank you.